I'm here with Dan Schawbel and Jaleh Bisharat. Dan is the founder of Millennial Branding and the author of Promote Yourself, and Jaleh is with Elance-oDesk. Thanks for joining me today.
Happy to be here.
Great.
Thrilled to be here. Thank you.
You all have a new survey out about millennials. And I'd like to explore a little bit about it because there's some really fascinating details about the millennial generation and what it means both for them and for hiring managers and their effect on and impact on business today. So I'm going to start right off. Dan, when you look at it, what's the biggest takeaway for both millennials and for hiring managers?
I think the big takeaway is that hiring managers can really start to leverage this incoming generation of millennials to fuse their innovation. So these companies need to do more with less. They have to innovate. They have to kind of push their companies forward and remain competitive on a global scale. And in order to do that, they should maximize their millennial talent, which will be the largest percentage of the workforce next year. And through the study, we found that millennials are creative. They're adaptable to change. They're able to exist in this business environment that's 24/7. It's nonstop, especially with all this technology. You're always connected all the time, and millennials understand that better than anyone.
Jaleh, one of the points that gets brought up in the survey talks about hard skills and what millennials either know now or need to know. Can you talk about that more, both from the millennial standpoint as well as hiring managers and what's expected?
Yes, one of the findings that surprised me the most actually is that more than half of the hiring managers that we talk to emphasize that they prioritize hard skills over what were traditionally more known as soft skills or culture fit, attitude, positive energy, etc. For myself, as someone who's hired a lot of people through the years, I've always prioritized a soft skill. So this shows how the world is changing. In fact, only 21% said that they prioritize culture fit and soft skills. And what we saw was that that is only intensifying. They expect to shift more towards hard skills in the future. I think some of this has to do with the fact that it is so much easier to measure results now, to measure hard skills than it's ever been before, because when work is done online, much easier to measure. I think also some of this is due to the fact that the need for technology is just insatiable. Those skills are just in such short supply, and companies know they need those skills in order to remain competitive and innovative. At the same time, what we see is that millennials are the first digital natives. 8 in 10 hiring managers agree that they're far more technologically savvy, and they report in familiarity with skills that are really very, very new. Things like cloud computing, driverless car, the Internet of Things, and so on. And so, making sure that companies can find those millennials with those skills is really going to be very important to our economy going forward.
You talk about companies and what companies are looking for. One of the points that gets brought out here is that this is a generation that is both very optimistic, but also very entrepreneurial, with a great number suggesting that they'd like to own their own businesses or be their own boss. Dan, what do you see in some of those stats about this group and the drive toward entrepreneurship?
From last year, I worked with Elance-oDesk, and we found that 90% of millennials view entrepreneurship as a mindset instead of the role of a business owner, meaning that everyone could be an entrepreneur. And then kind of this year, for this new study, we found that the majority of millennials believe that technology has enabled them to start a business, right? And so their optimism, I think, comes into play, even though they suffer from about $40,000 of debt, 21 million living with their parents, 40% overall in America, unemployed, underemployed, or have given up. So a lot of obstacles, but they're the most optimistic generation, partially because they feel like they have their whole life ahead of them and they can really make a difference in the world, but also because they can use this technology in order to formulate their own careers and create their own lifestyles. And that's really attractive to them, even if they get a real full-time job. When they come home from work or outside of work or on weekends, there's so many opportunities to freelance or do passion projects that were probably not as possible years ago without a web designer that you have to hire or investment from some sort of VC firm or angel. So millennials are able to kind of reach for the stars because the cost of starting a business is much lower than ever before.
Jaleh, one of the topics that we've been talking a lot about, both in business and in media and just in our community, deals with gender and women in business. There was an interesting stat in the survey that looks at, I believe it's job satisfaction or whether or not you're happy at a job. Tell us about the difference between how men and women in the millennial group are looking at that question.
Yeah. Well, one of the things we found, and this is not surprising, is that millennials have the most progressive attitude towards gender equality compared to the previous generation. What did give us pause, though, is when we asked the millennials, does your job, does it exceed your expectations? Is it about what you expected, or is it worse than you expected? 21% of women said it was worse than expected, and only 12% of men answered that same question the same way. So almost double the number of women were dissatisfied with a job. And I think that has to do with the fact that as much as we aspire towards gender equality, we still have a lot of work to do. I think, also, one other interesting statistic, we saw that about 3/4 of the people in the survey of the millennials who had not freelanced indicated an interest in pursuing freelancing. And I do wonder if, when you freelance and become your own boss, it doesn't matter what gender you are. When you are working for a client, especially when you're working online, people are gender blind. So maybe this is also an indication that businesses of one provide a lot more opportunity for women. They succeed or fail based on results alone.
And my last question deals with an attitude that gets brought up a lot and talked about a lot in the workforce, especially with millennials, although I think it's been mentioned in the past, but it's this word narcissism. And even in the survey, you've got both hiring managers and the millennials themselves identifying narcissism as a thing that either they are called out on or that they're confronted with. Dan, I'm curious, what's your take on narcissism in the workplace today and for millennials? How should we take it? Is it a bad thing?
Yeah, I think narcissism is derived from two different things for this generation. Number one is we grew up as the trophy generation, right? Everyone got a trophy. I mean, I always tell the story of how I played soccer for years, and we have so many I have like 14 trophies. I don't even remember winning, but it was all there, right? And so it's like your parents told you were special, you could do anything, follow your dreams, all of this. So that's part of it. And the other part is, I think, technology. Technology does positive and negative things, right? But technology allows you to work from wherever and whenever you want, and that's the positive. Part of the negative, though, is that people are kind of shaping their own images online, so they're kind of positive and make them look good, right? And so they're posting really positive things, like I got this achievement, and I just have a baby, and all these things, right? And so it's and just the whole dynamic of getting followers and friends and likes and all of these things, comments. It's created kind of this whole like micro celebrity society where everyone's like vying for attention, not just companies vying for attention, but individuals. And we see this mostly with the millennials and the Gen Zs, but because there are so many people online now, of course, billions, and because millennials are online, older generations want to be able to connect with them in order to get business done, in order, for like kind of online family reunions in a sense. And so older generations have adopted a lot of those same behaviors because of it.
Great. Thank you so much. One last thing, if somebody wants to get more information on this and they want to get a copy of the study, where can they go?
They can go to Elance-oDesk.com, look on our press page, and they will find the survey.
Great. Dan, Jaleh, thank you for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.